Michael makes a really good point, so let's just open this up a little bit. Say, my name is Lauren, and here I am shopping in a supermarket, and I steal a pencil. That's not right.
Lauren, enough with the pencils.
No, I have to go over pencils and office supplies. It's part of the ethics thing.
That isn't ethics. Ethics is a real discussion of competing conceptions of the good. This is just the corporate anti-shoplifting rules.
I'll drop an ethics bomb on you. Would you steal bread to feed your family? Boom!
Exactly, Andy.
Yeah, I took intro to philosophy twice, no big deal.
It's a trick question. The bread is poisoned. Also, it's not your real family. You've been cuckolded by a stronger, smarter male.
No, that's not how it works.
Okay, hope you guys liked that little clip from The Office. I saw that and thought I would share it with you guys. Alright, so this is going to be a video on how to write a philosophy paper. I'm suspecting that most of you, if not all of you, have never taken a philosophy class before, and that probably means that you've never written a philosophy paper before. And writing a philosophy paper is different in important ways from writing papers for other classes. It's not going to be completely alien, I imagine, but it's also easy, I think, to miss sort of the core point of the assignment. The general idea is the following. I do not, repeat, do not simply want you to summarize what you've read or what other people have said. The principal purpose of a philosophy paper is to watch you do philosophy. So I want to see you react to what you've read. I want to see you react to these arguments. But the principal assignment is for you to give your ideas, to back up your ideas, to defend your ideas with a rational argument. That's the general gist. Okay, so let's take a look at the PowerPoint, shall we? To start out, you should begin early, as in right now. I'm hoping that up to this point you've been thinking, could I write a paper on this? Could I write a paper on this? If you haven't been, you should start doing that now. You've got a decent amount of time. I think we're a little over 2 weeks, I think, until your paper is due. Your paper is due the first week after spring break. But still, you don't want to wait until the last minute, because trust me, I know when I see the papers that have been where you've waited till the last minute, and it hurts you. So get started early. At least thinking about the topic. Even if you don't actually start writing it until a little bit later, you should try to start picking a topic right now. Okay, next up, as far as picking your topic goes, you can pick any topic that you like so long as it's something that we've talked about in this class, something that we've read something on or discussed in the discussion boards or something that I cover in one of the videos. It has to have a touchstone, at least, in the material we've talked about. If you write a paper about a completely separate topic, something we have not addressed in this class, then even if you write a really good paper, that's going to hurt you. So it has to be something that we've addressed. If you really, really want to write on something different, then contact me first, at least, to touch base, and so you can get my feedback. Second, you want to make sure it's something very, very specific. If you try to tackle 5 separate topics in one short paper, you're going to fail at all 5. Pick one point of contention, one argument, one issue, one narrow, focused thing. Focus on it like a laser, and just address that topic and that topic alone. You're not going to be able to solve several different issues at once, to address several different arguments at once. So 1, at most 2, separate points of contention, separate points of argument. My catchphrase here is I want your paper to be narrow and deep, not shallow and wide. If you try to talk about 5 separate things, your paper's destined to be shallow. I want you to pick 1 or 2 and focus on them, go into detail, expand on them. And then third, of course, you want it to be something you can handle in the space allotted. There's only, I think it's about 4 or 5 pages, I think, is what the text limit is. That's not a whole lot of time. So don't think you're going to prove once and for all, absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt, that euthanasia is immoral or whatever, because you're not going to do that. Make a more modest goal, something like, I will provide some reasons for thinking that euthanasia is immoral. That would be a better example of what you want to try to aim for. Okay, I want to give you some advice on getting your mind working. I want to start off by not jumping to conclusions. Now, obviously, as you read this stuff, you think about it, you may have had opinions going into it. As you discuss this stuff in the discussion boards, your opinions may develop. But you might find that when you actually start to write a paper, your ideas may start to change. Now, you want to go into it with an open mind. Even if you have some detailed and some passionate ideas about the issue at hand, try to remain open to the possibility that in the process of writing the paper, you will change your mind. Because it does happen sometimes. It's not common, but a couple of times a semester at least, I'll get maybe 2 or 3 students who say they start off writing a paper taking one side of an issue. They got to the end of the paper and realized actually that they thought they were wrong and they had to change their position. If you keep an open mind going into it, it's much easier to adjust than if you close your mind at the outset. It's going to make it a lot harder for you to accommodate your changing opinions like that. I recommend looking over the readings, of course. Hopefully you've been taking some notes or at least highlighting as you read. Look over that. Read the text. Read the related readings. Make sure that you fully grasp the issue. One of the most common ways to screw up a paper, of course, is to not really understand the topic that you're writing on. Now, even if you think you understand the topic that you're writing on, go back and double check. Go back and read over it again just to make sure you really understand it. You'd be amazed how an otherwise good paper can be totally screwed up by missing a simple but not obvious point in the text that completely undermines the argument. So look over that material, refresh yourself before you get into it. I also recommend finding a private place to go to think things through. Personally, I like to go for a walk. I find some place with not a lot of cars, not a lot of people, and I walk, and honestly, I talk to myself. I talk out loud. I say to myself, okay, what's the argument here? Okay, this, that, and the other. All right, what do I like about this argument? Well, those first 2 parts seemed okay. That third part, something about that third part I didn't like very much. What's the problem with the third part? And I will literally just talk it through. I'll take maybe an hour to think about it. I'll come home, I'll jot down a couple of quick notes, and then I'll walk away from it for the rest of the night or whatever. Now, maybe going for a walk isn't your thing. It is kind of cold outside right now after all. So maybe going for a drive is more your style, or taking a hot bath, a hot shower, or even just lying down in your bed in the dark. But do something to get away from the distractions that will keep you from focusing. Turn your phone off, leave your iPod behind, tell your roommates or your family members or whatever that you need some space, you need some time. Just something so you won't be distracted and you can think clearly and focus on the issue. And then, like I said, just take some notes and then come back to it later. And you'll be surprised if you spend that time, if you set time aside like that just to think, not to read, not to write, but just to think. You'll get a lot of good work done that way in your mind, and that will make you more prepared to actually write the paper. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at the paper itself. You have to have a thesis for this paper. That is that you have to take a position. You have to argue that this position is correct, this position is wrong. This person, you agree with this person or you disagree with this person on this issue, or you kind of agree and you kind of disagree, something like that. But you have to make an argument. You have to defend a position. And you want to state what that position is right away. Usually it's the last sentence in the first paragraph. You want a sentence that says something like, I will argue that, or it is my thesis that, or in this paper I will try to show that, and then tell me what it is that you're going to try to prove, what it is that you're going to try to show. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the last sentence in the first paragraph, but definitely by the end of the first page at least. If you don't do that, then it's going to be a big problem. I shouldn't have to second guess you. I shouldn't have to try to figure out what side of the issue you're coming down on until I get to the end. I don't want it to be a mystery. I don't want it to be a big reveal. I want to know what it is that you're going to try to prove, so that way I can assess whether or not you do a good job at actually proving that. So state your thesis right away. All right, next up, you need to actually make an argument. The bulk of your paper should be argument. One common problem is people will spend 75% of the paper restating what someone else thinks, and then at the very end they'll tack on a couple of ideas of their own. That balance should be absolutely the other way around. You can spend maybe a paragraph, maybe half a page or so saying, here's what Daniel Callahan has to say about euthanasia. No more than that, really. If you spend much more than that, then you're getting in trouble. So take a short while to summarize the argument or the reading that you're going to be dealing with, and then the rest of the time should be your analysis. Here's where I agree, here's where I disagree, here's problems, and so forth. That's what you want to be doing for the majority of your paper. Now, like I said at the very beginning, the point of a paper is to see you do philosophy, not to show me that you know what other philosophers have said. I know what these philosophers have said. I assign these readings. I give you the quizzes to make sure that you've done the readings. The point of the paper is to show me that you can do what they've been doing, that you can make an argument, that you can take a position and try to use reason to persuade people that your position is correct. That's what I want to see you do here. I want to see you think for yourself. I want to see you argue. I want to see you reason. Okay, so this is, for some people it's kind of an easy thing to do, but for a lot of people some help is really a good idea. So I recommend finding an interlocutor. That's a fancy philosopher's word for someone to talk to about philosophy. Ideally, someone else in this class. If you happen to know anyone else in this class, live near someone else in this class, that would probably be the best person. But obviously, I realize since this is distance education, that's probably not going to be a terribly viable option for a lot of you. So failing that, someone else who's taken a philosophy class, preferably an ethics class, but at least some philosophy class, ask them if you can borrow an hour of their time. Or failing that, just an intelligent friend, someone who you respect intellectually. Say, hey, I'm trying to write this philosophy paper, I could use some help. Would you mind sitting down with me for an hour? And ask them to help you talk it through. You take whatever side of the issue you want to take in your paper, and ask them to take the other side. Even if they agree with you, just say, hey, play devil's advocate. I'm going to argue euthanasia is morally permissible. Do your best to find flaws in my argument. Tell me why my argument's unconvincing. Keep a record, just keep some paper and some notes handy. Now, most of the ideas you'll come up with probably won't lead anywhere. There'll be false starts. You'll start off saying something you think sounds good, but turns out it's not good. That's okay. It doesn't have to all be hits. You only need, like I say, 2 or 3 really good ideas to spin a paper around. So if you talk for an hour and 45 minutes, this ends up being a waste. Those 15 minutes will be very, very useful. Now, if you can't find someone else to talk to, then I highly recommend coming and talking to me. Again, I realize because this is distance education, this is not an option for a lot of you, but for some of you at least, you're at least in the area. I have regular office hours. You can come by, you can bring an outline, you can bring a rough draft, or you can just bring a, hey, I have no clue what I want to write on, whatever. But, if we sit down face-to-face in person, I can give you a lot of hands-on help. Usually, if you bring at least a couple of pages, we can take 20 minutes, and that 20 minutes can really make drastic improvements on your paper as a whole. If that's not an option, if you can't come see me but you do want to talk to me, send me an email with your phone number. We can arrange a time. I can call you, or you can call me, and we can talk it out on the phone. Or we could use Skype or something like that if any of you use internet calling, something along those lines. But we can figure out some way to communicate over a distance, and I can try to give you personal feedback. I do have to say one thing here, though. I don't know, I think I'll say it later on, but I'll say it here as well. I cannot accept rough drafts via email, and the reason why I cannot do that is because I've tried that in the past, and what happens is always the same. The deadline comes up, and like the day before the deadline, I end up getting 20 rough drafts. Someone's student saying, hey, can you take a quick look at this? And the answer is no, I can't. I get inundated. So I have to make it a policy. I cannot accept rough drafts via email. But I will happily talk things through with you in person, online, over the phone, whatever it needs to be. That's really the best way to get feedback anyway, because doing it via email is slow and sloppy. All right, next up, more info on how to make an argument. Now, some people mistake making an argument with simply stating a position. Now, that's a start, of course. You have to say what you think, but simply giving your opinion is not an argument. It's simply stating what you think. You have to do better than that. You have to explain the rational reasons why you think it, why you think you are rationally justified in holding that position. You need to try to argue for an impartial person who's on the fence on the issue. They're intelligent, they're informed, they haven't taken the class, they haven't done the readings that you have, they're trying to make up their mind, and they just don't know what way to go, and you're trying to push them off the fence. You're trying to say, here's why you should agree with me. That's your target. That's what you want to hold in mind. You're not going to persuade such a person by simply pounding your fist and saying, I really believe this is true, this has to be true, I feel it in my bones. That's not going to convince anyone. A good idea might be to try enumerating your argument. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I did not do a video on it, but a PowerPoint presentation in there on logic and argumentation that gives some example of some enumerated arguments. You might want to try taking a look at those. It's not an essential or a necessary thing by any stretch of the imagination, but it can help to give it a try. Lay out your arguments point by point. Point 1, point 2, point 3, and how do they lead up to the conclusion that you're trying to establish. All right, next up, this is going to be something that I want to caution against specifically because I have seen this a problem in some of the discussion boards on this one. You have to use public reasons in your argument. What do I mean by public reasons? Public reasons are reasons that do not depend on any particular religious, political, socioeconomic, ethnic, or cultural background. If you're stating why you believe something, and your personal reasons for believing something is because of your religious beliefs, for example, then that's absolutely fine as far as you go. But you have to recognize that that's not going to convince anyone who doesn't share your religious beliefs. So, if your argument depends on, the Catholic point of view or something like that, or the Jewish or the Islamic point of view, whatever the case may be, that's only going to convince people who happen to be Jews or Catholics or Muslims or whatever. And you don't want to limit your argument like that. You don't want to make your argument only compelling to people who share your predispositions. Because odds are they're probably going to agree with you on the conclusion anyway. If it really does follow straight out of your religious beliefs again, or your political beliefs or whatever, then those people are predisposed to agree with you, and the argument is not going to be very difficult, and it's not going to be very hard to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. You want to target as broad an array of people as possible. So people who are religious, people who are not religious, people who share your religion and people who don't share your religion, people who come from different political backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different ethnicities, different genders, different cultures. Now, obviously, you're never going to be able to convince everyone. That's not what I'm looking for here. But you want to cast a broad net, and that means not basing your argument on any particular interpretation of the Bible or any particular understanding of God or understanding of how the American political system ought to work or anything else like that. And again, I'm not trying to disenfranchise your religious point of view or anything like that. Of course, I think everyone's entitled to a religious point of view, and it's an important and good thing, and very relevant to ethics in a lot of ways. But when it comes to writing a philosophy paper, you have to use public reasons, and that means you have to check that sort of sectarian reasoning at the door. Okay, next up, like I suggested earlier, I recommend that you do some preliminary writing. Start by writing an outline. Before you actually sit down to write the actual paper, do a rough sketch of how you think the argument's going to develop. What's your intro going to look like? What's your basic argument going to be? What sort of counterpoints are you going to consider, and so forth? How does each part of the argument of the paper establish your conclusion? A lot of people, if they don't do an outline, they end up shooting from the hip, and they start off nice and good, but they get halfway through the paper, and a new idea comes up and jumps into their head, and they start following that idea. And by the end of the paper, they're talking about a completely separate topic. There's no cohesion, no sort of single unified argument. Every sort of individual paragraph might seem good, but they just don't really connect in any sort of coherent way. So to avoid that, write an outline and try to stick to it as best you can. I also recommend writing a rough draft. I understand that getting the momentum to write a rough draft is really, really hard for a lot of people. You write the paper, you want to write it once and be done with it. I fully understand that. I really do. But I recommend this all the time, and it's amazing the difference in quality you see between a rough draft and a second draft. Students can increase their grades by two letters or more even if they actually go back and rewrite a second draft. So try that. Sit down, give it a go. Tell yourself the paper is actually due a week before it really is due. And you have to have the rough draft due a week before it's due. And that will give you a solid extra week to walk away from it for a couple of days, relax, work on other classes, then come back to it, read it over again. You'll be amazed what you catch. You'll be amazed the little problems, the things where you're not terribly clear, the mistakes. You'll catch them and you can fix them, and it will improve your overall grade, or will likely improve your overall grade considerably. Okay, yes, like I said before, I'm happy to look at rough drafts. You can bring them to me in person. I can't take them via office hours, via email. If you can't make my office hours, but you can come to campus, but you can't make my office hours, let me know. I will make an appointment with you. I will happy to work around your schedule, however it is. But you have to reach out to me. You have to say, look, I need help. I don't know how to do this. Please, these are my circumstances, these are my situations. What can you do for me? We will work something out. I am more than happy to go to considerable lengths to give you feedback if necessary, but you have to let me know that you need help. Okay, so here is a recommended structure, a recommended outline structure for the paper. Now, this isn't something that you absolutely have to stick to, but here, this gives you at least a decent idea of the sort of structure that I'm looking for. Again, rather than just freewheeling it and throwing your ideas on paper in sort of a stream of consciousness way, that's a great thing to do if you're on a rough draft. If you're just trying to get ideas out, go ahead, stream of consciousness all you want. But when it comes time for a final draft, you want to structure the ideas in a way that facilitates clarity and organization. So here's a recommended structure. Start out first paragraph with an introduction. Set the stage. Say what the topic is. Say what author it is that you're going to be writing on, what their basic position is. State your thesis. I'm going to agree with this person, or I'm going to disagree with this person. I'm going to agree somewhat, but disagree somewhat. Again, whatever thesis it is, state it and state it clearly. Underline it, italicize it, highlight it. Do something so I can't miss your thesis. Second paragraph, reiterate your subject argument. So again, let's just say that you're choosing to write on Daniel Callahan's argument on euthanasia. Give a brief summary, a brief synopsis of what his argument is. Again, you don't want to restate the whole article. That will take you too long. So there's one part of the article, focus on it. In the second section of his article, he says this, and tell me what he says. Again, try to do it in sort of a clear and objective way as you can. Don't attack it yet. Don't say where the flaws are just yet. Just get it on the table. Say why it is he thinks what he thinks. Then you want to give your argument, your objection to the subject if you're objecting to the person, or your addition if you agree with the person. I think this person's right. Think about this circumstance, for example. Take their argument to the next level. Take it in a direction that they themselves did not take it. Add something new to the discussion. If it's an objection or if it's an augmentation, an amplification, whatever it is. Part 3 is sort of where you get to shine. You get to show me your argument. Now, in my experience, most students can do steps 1, 2, and 3 okay. Things get tricky in steps 4 and 5. Steps 4 and 5, you need just to show an objection on behalf of your opponent. I'll say more about that in just a moment. I'll say why that's crucial and what it is that you need to do. But you do want to think about that. Once you've made your argument, just ask yourself, how would someone who disagrees with me think about this? What would they say in response to this argument? Give a response for point number 4. And then give your reply to that in point number 5. Now, by the way, again, these aren't necessarily 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. And the first 2 are probably paragraphs, but 3, 4, and 5 might be 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs even. But the important point is that you get these basic sections on there. You make an argument, you object to your own argument on behalf of your opponent, and then you give a reply. This is something, considering an objection and giving a reply is something I stress. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. But if you get through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you find you've only got 2 pages, 3 pages, then you can repeat steps 3, 4, and 5 as needed. Put down another argument or another objection or another reply to an objection. Repeat those steps until you have a full paper. Okay, so now let me talk a little bit more about objections and replies. Like I said, that's something that deserves more attention. You really do need to consider objections. I cannot stress this enough. It's not enough just to make an argument. You have to show me that you understand both sides of this issue. You have to show me that you understand why an intelligent, rational person would disagree with you. A quick point from the history of philosophy here might help. We read John Stuart Mill's Utilitarianism earlier on. John Stuart Mill's father, James Mill, was also a philosopher, and he had a principle. You guys have probably all heard the statement, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. James Mill actually said, no, you're not entitled to your own opinion. The only way you earn the right to have your own opinion is if you challenge it, if you understand why not everyone shares your opinion. It's only by doing that that you earn the right to your own opinion. And so that's what I want to see you do here. I want to see you show me that you've thought about not just one side, but both sides of this argument, both sides of this issue. Why would someone disagree? Why would they reject it? What kind of flaws might they see in your argument? And remember the straw man fallacy here. Don't just give them a half a sentence saying, someone might respond by saying this, but they're wrong because of that. Give them a chance to breathe. Give them an honest-to-God chance to speak their mind and to put a serious, honest objection on the table. 3, 4 sentences at least, trying to find a weakness in your own argument. If you can really do that, then you will impress me. Then you'll show me that you fully understand this issue on both sides. That's what you want to do. considering objections really is crucial to a good philosophy paper. I suppose I've seen, a small handful, maybe 3 or 4 A papers in my time that did not actually consider an objection, but they are incredibly rare. The vast majority of papers that fail to consider objections, even if everything else goes well, the average grade for a philosophy paper that does everything else well except doesn't consider an objection is a B. Usually everything else does not go well, so it's often a C. So I assume you want a better grade than that. That means that you need to consider an objection and respond to that objection. That's what distinguishes a decent paper from a good paper. Okay, last slide here now on style. Now, I don't care a whole lot about AMA format or MLA format, for footnotes. That sort of table manners isn't really a concern of mine. For that matter, I'm not even a stickler about things like spelling and grammar, just so long as I understand what it is you're trying to say. If I have to reread a sentence because your grammar or your spelling are bad, then that will hurt you. But other than that, what I'm concerned about most is the quality of your ideas, not so much all the niceties that you dot your T's and cross your I's and all that sort of stuff. That I don't care about. Now, that having been said, there are a few issues of presentation that do matter. First off, clarity. Clarity is a principal virtue when it comes to philosophy. The very nature of philosophy can deal with very abstract concepts. And this is especially the case if you're going to be writing on meta-ethics. But even if you are writing on one of the applied issues, which tend to be more concrete, it's easy to get mired in obscurity. It's easy to become very confusing very fast. And even if it's clear in your head, even if you know what you're talking about, that doesn't mean that other people are going to be able to understand what you're saying. So ways to avoid this: define any technical terms that you're using. Any terms that your average Joe on the street wouldn't know, like active euthanasia, for example. Give a definition, just so there's no mistake, no lack of clarity. Give a definition of what your technical terms are. Try to keep your sentences as short as possible. Run-on sentences are the death of clarity. The first part might be clear, the second part might be clear, the third part might be clear, but put all 3 parts together and it becomes very confusing very fast. Break your sentences down, keep them short. And lastly, try to avoid jargon. I realize this is a strange thing to say coming from a philosopher, because philosophers love us some jargon. But again, for a class paper like this, you want to stay away from the jargon. You want to try to use common sense language as much as possible. Like I say, things that everyday people will understand. I also recommend giving your paper to a third party to read. Like I said, that same intelligent friend, if you can bug them for another few minutes. Hand it to them, and if they're willing to give you feedback, if they're willing to say, I like this part, I don't like this part, that's great, of course. But in the very minimum, just have them say, is it clear? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Give them a thumbs up or thumbs down. If they give you a thumbs up, that's a good sign that you've got clarity. If they give you a thumbs down, then that means you got to go rework it, try to make it more clear. Precision. State your thesis right away, early on. I said that already. And try to state a precise thesis. I will argue Daniel Callahan is wrong. That's a thesis. It's a decent thesis. Here's a better one. I will argue Daniel Callahan is wrong because he fails to consider this aspect of euthanasia, or whatever. The more specific you can be at the beginning, the better. So this is primarily advice with respect to the thesis, but it's also true with respect to the argument in general. If your argument is very vague and nebulous, and I can't see sort of precisely what it is that you're trying to say, that will hurt you. So the more precise you can be, the better. All right, lastly, focus. Try to keep focused. Every sentence should contribute to your thesis. So don't bring up other issues. Don't start talking about euthanasia and then say, what would the implications would this have for the death penalty or abortion? Don't bring up other topics. Even if those are interesting, even if you say smart things about them, you end up getting lost and you end up not being able to prove what you want to prove. So stay focused. Pick one topic, one issue, one thesis, and don't deviate from it. And same thing goes with introductions. You don't need lofty introductions. Since the dawn of time, man has contemplated the nature of good and evil. Don't bother with that, really. Cut to the chase. Daniel Callahan makes an argument about euthanasia. Really, that's what you need to just get right to it. You only have 4 pages. Keep it short and sweet. Now, again, don't get confused again by the fact that I keep using Callahan here as an example. I'm just using him as an illustration. As I said before, you can write on anything. That's just my illustration. Okay. That's it for my, okay, I thought I had this in there somewhere, but I don't recall saying it, so I'm going to say it now and again anyway. Read your paper out loud. You'd be amazed what you catch if you read your paper out loud. It's one thing when you read it and you hear it in your mind only. When you hear it in your actual ear, you'll catch run-on sentences, you'll catch poor grammar, you'll catch poor phrasing. You will fix your paper if you read it out loud. So go through it once and read it out loud to yourself, and then fix it up. Okay, that's my last piece of advice. I hope this is all clear now. If any of you are in any way unclear on what I'm looking for, if you have any questions at all, please, please, please contact me. I do not want you being unclear as to what I'm looking for in the paper. I don't want anyone responding back to me via email after they get their grade saying, oh, I didn't realize what you were looking for. I didn't realize what you want. I want to make sure that everyone understands precisely what it is that I'm looking for. I hope that this has accomplished that. If it hasn't, email me. Ask questions. Don't worry if they seem like they're stupid questions or I don't want to bother you. No, that's what I'm here for. If there's any kind of lack of clarity, any confusion at all, contact me and I will try to clear that up for you. Otherwise, I will assume that you all understand what I'm looking for. Good luck and take care.